Well, good evening. Lovely to be with you. And so I'm excited to announce our next online retreat just a month from now, August 22nd through the 24th, a weekend retreat. And I hope you can make it. Hope you can make it. I know this is kind of quick after our last retreat, but we're going to have a couple months this fall with no retreat. So, anyways, looking forward to teaching again on retreat. I just love being on retreat. For me, retreat is a time where we can really deepen and crystallize with the energies of awakening. It's hard to be awake in this world. It's hard because there's so much chaos and confusion here on planet Earth. And retreat is a time when we consciously choose to stop and to put everything down, and deepen together. And so there'll be details. I'll get it posted on the website, hopefully sometime this week or early next week, if the stars align. So, in addition to this, the next thing we have on the books is Shivananda Ashram, March 29th of 2026. That's in the Bahamas. And so I'm sure that'll be lots of fun, lots of fun. And, sometimes it's just beautiful to travel to natural lands, and travel to the ocean and, allow Mother Nature to wake us up, along with some good spiritual teachings. So so I'm trying to think. Justina has her hand raised. Okay, yeah. Justina, you have a question you want to ask right out of the gates here? Let's see.
Okay. No, I was just asking about the Bahamas one because I'm thinking about going to that.
Yeah, that'd be
Uh,
exciting, huh?
and yeah, but I'm wondering how retreaty it's going to be, or is it going to be mostly
Yeah, this is a new experience for me. So
yeah.
the Bahamas one, I believe they have me scheduled teaching like 3 sessions. And so there's 3 teachers, me and Miranda McPherson, and then Mary Reed, who I don't know. And it's a symposium on spiritual awakening. And, I think it's going to be some evening satsangs with some workshops throughout the day, something like that. But if you click on my website under the events section, there'll be details. And if you do choose to go, please make sure you use that link because if you don't use that link, just all the proceeds go to the Shivananda people. If you do use the link, they give me a little something, a little something. So, anyways, I hope you can join. And yeah, if you ask me, send me an email and I can reach out and maybe dig a little deep and see what the schedule actually is. Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Nice to see you, Justina. Nice to see you. Yeah. And that one probably would be easy for you to get to. The Bahamas, I think, is an easy flight from North Carolina. A little bit more difficult for us folks out west, but we look forward to it. Nothing will ever be as difficult as traveling to India or Tibet or something, where almost guaranteed, you'll have some trouble with your belly at some point. I had a wonderful, wonderful time in India when I was there when I was quite young, but boy, did I get sick near the end. So, anyways, okay, those are the big announcements. We have another retreat that I'm trying to get scheduled in Washington State. That should be sometime late fall, winter, sometime in there. Sometime we'll sort it out. We'll sort it out. So, anyways, enough messing around with announcements. Let us shut down our eyes and open our hearts. And I'm going to invite us tonight just to look at, to play with, being open. And I'm going to invite us to imagine that spiritual awakening, this realm of enlightenment. Well, it arises out of a great openness, an openness of mind, an openness of heart, an openness of presence. And so as we sit down, I invite you just to contemplate, to notice, what does it feel like to be open? What is the experience of being open like? What's that like? And so we're breathing and we're softening throughout the body. And I invite the breath to be deep and full. Of course, it's hard to be open if our breath is short and shallow. It's hard to be open if the body is tense. And some of us, we are habitually tense or habitually tense. And if that's you, I invite you to see if you can open right in the heart of the tension. And so enlightenment and awakening is synonymous with being open. It's synonymous with letting go of a smaller, limited aperture, the aperture of the ego and of the nervous system, of the personality. And so if there's any tension here in the body, whether that be in the forehead or in the jaw, in the shoulders, or the neck, the heart, the belly, well, the invitation is to open. Whereas the habitual nature of the ego is to resist being open. Somehow we equate being closed with being controlled. And there's a subtle truth to that in the ego, that when you shut everything down, there's less to feel, less to experience. And often as we open together, you will certainly feel and experience more. You will feel and experience more. And so not only are we actively opening, I invite you to turn around and to look at that which is open. Another way of saying becoming aware of awareness. Most of us are aware of where we're tight and tense, aware of this thought or that thought. aware of what we like and don't like. But I invite you to open to being open. And I ask you to, well, just to notice, what is that like as we open to being open? As we open to being open. Who is it? What is it? That is openness. And so I'm going to invite us to continue to breathe and to feel and to soften. And to inwardly smile, to inwardly fall in love with your divinity. To fall in love with being open. Like how big is openness? And does the one who is open, does that one have a name, a form, an age, a gender? Or is that one simply timelessly, eternally open, empty, free of all conditioning, free of all conditioning? And so again, I invite us to smile, to recognize, to realize very quiet aspect of consciousness, most primordial essence of your being is a radical openness. Radical openness. Radical openness. And so I'm going to invite you to open your eyes just from this space of radical openness and just noticing how the world looks different. When we're in a space of openness, there's no judgment. There's no wrong, there's no other. There's a supreme inclusivity. There's a gentleness about it, a unification with life, a unification with life. But so often in this world, we don't allow ourselves to live in this way. And we live from the mind, and the mind's always asserting itself. And so I'll just ask you, just as to have a little fun with inquiry, and as we play around simply with being open, I invite you to write a little something in the chat about the aspect of your mind that comes forward while you're being open, the aspect that asserts itself. And I'll ask you this: have you ever just been, it's like walking, calmly or sweetly, serenely in nature, or maybe just, down the street from your home or whatever. And then someone comes up and inserts themselves into your openness. And they might, want to tell you about this thing or that thing, or share their drama or their confusion, or complain about something. Or, we've all had this experience. We're just hanging out in a place of peace, minding our own business. And then along comes, Sally Sue, and she wants to give us the day's gossip. The day's gossip. And often that's how our thinking mind is. We're just sitting or walking, resting in this depth of being. And then the mind comes forward and it wants to say, I'm angry about something. I can't relax. I'm so worked up. This isn't fair. This isn't right. And I invite you, come on now, some people play with me here, to write a little something in the chat, like what comes forward. Like today I was just walking in, it's actually taking my daughter to Walmart, and we were shopping for some school supplies. And this lunatic, he was in front of me and he just yelled out, some kind of silly thing. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police. And I was looking at this person, who is this nut? Who's this nut? And then I looked off in the distance and I saw Lauren there, and I gave her a wave, and Kyle, and just kept on walking, just in a place of deep peace. But it's crazy. This world is just full of all kinds of nuts, but often we are the nut. Like we have a nut that lives in our head, in our consciousness. And sometimes we're just hanging out in peace, and some wild maniac arises from our past, or some lustful, desirous creature arises in the depths of our consciousness. Sometimes an angry old sailor, comes out of us, or someone who's drunk on whatever type of feeling, whatever type of feeling. So Janet writes, there is an isness, an openness, and in all this is God too. Yeah, well, that's beautiful. That's when we're really steeped in the openness. So Janet's, showing us her divine nature, when we're in openness fully. There's no trouble. There's no problem. Now, when we're in our mind, often it's judging the people around us, judging them this way or that way. Or it's judging ourselves this way or that way. It's judging our experience, of just having a body. Because sometimes when you have a body, sometimes you just get out of bed and it just hurts. It just hurts. All the guys I talk to about, who I do jujitsu with, it's like everyone talks about getting out of bed and be like, oh, my back, my neck, my shoulder, whatever. It is. And, when we're a young buck, we get out of the bed, no big deal. No big deal. We could stay up all night drinking and sleep 3 hours to get out of bed, no big deal. But, we start getting past 40 or 50 or 60, and life tends to take a toll on us. And more as we identify with the body, the more we suffer. I had this fun experience on Friday. I've been out running the dentist since I was about 14 years old. I had this baby wisdom tooth, and I kept all my wisdom teeth. I was like, they're mine. I'm not giving them to you. They're mine. And finally, the dentist was like, hey, that little baby wisdom tooth is turning into some trouble. And I kept asking him, are you sure? Are you sure it's trouble? And they've asked me about that, every single time I've been to the dentist in the last, 30 some years or whatever. But anyways, so come Friday, they had to take that thing out. They had to take that thing out. And so the dentist put this some kind of vice in my mouth, and he started using this little crowbar and getting that tooth out of there. And afterwards I said, hey, like, I want that tooth. Like, I want to see it. I want to see it. And I can remember I should have brought it for show and tell tonight, but it's just this little tooth. And I was looking at it, and it's a funny thing because as human beings, we identify with our body. We think of ourselves as this body. We think of ourselves as this mind and the collection of thoughts and memories, as our emotions. But I held up this tooth, and I was just staring at this tooth, looking at it, and just asking, is this me? Like, is that thing there me? It's like, no, that's not me. That's not me. I can remember when, I was first in college and I had to take a philosophy class. And there was some inquiry where we'd go through every part of the body, and it was like a real graphic inquiry. I talked about just like cutting off your arms. Is that you? Like, would you still be you without your arms? So, yeah, I think so. And then cut off your legs. Okay, I think so. You know, I better bite my tongue, but sometimes we cut off other parts of the body and we're much more identified with them. This happens with men as they get older and they start doing this funny thing where they grow skin on the top of their head. I don't know how they do that, but it's an amazing thing. Somehow they make the hair disappear and they grow skin, and they resist it because they think of themselves as, I am this hair. I'm this rug on top of my head. Some women, they try to freeze themselves in time to their face, how it was when they were 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I think those are the years that they try to freeze and say, I want to be like this. Some of them even do that thing with the Botox and make those lips. I don't know how those lips work, but I think, like, this is what I am. I'm these big, funny looking lips. No offense to any of y'all if you're into the Botox thing. I'm a all natural kind of guy, so I tend to resist that stuff. But anyways, we get confused on the path. We get so easily confused with this identification. I can remember there's been many times in my life where I've run into these, I'll call them old timers. They're probably the same age as me, but I'll call them old timers. And they're still talking about when they played football in high school. And I'm always like, guys, that was 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, man. Like, hey, I hope you're living the rest of your life, experiencing life. And when we're this openness, it's a funny thing because when we're openness, it's the opposite of having an identity that is fixed. And the way the Buddha taught, the way the great yogis have taught, so when we hold on to a fixed identity of this is me, that we really suffer. This is me, that we suffer. I had this funny experience with my wife today. I was changing the oil in her car, and um, there's this thing that some mechanics do. Whereas if you can do an oil change without getting a drop of oil on you, you're a great mechanic. You know, let's just say you're a pretty good mechanic, because an oil change is pretty easy, not too complicated. But anyways, and I've changed the oil before where it's just like I've had it all down my arm, especially if I'm working on a big diesel motor or something, because they have lots of oil in them. But anyways, and I did a great job today. Like I did the whole thing like real quick, lickety split, maybe 15 minutes from start to finish. I did a good job. And right at the end, I asked her to help me pour the oil into like the jug so I can take it back and recycle it. And, I'm pouring it in the jug, and, she got a little bit on her hands, and she took her hand while I was bent over, and she just like reached around and just slapped me on my back and just wiped the oil on my shirt. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? Like, what's going on here? Like, what are you doing to me? Because I had a story in my head. I'm going to do this without getting a drop of oil on me. That was a story Craig had, and I was semi-attached to it, semi-attached, not really, but just semi-attached. And, and she's looking at me, and she's looking at what I'm wearing. I'm wearing like all my old clothes, because I'm doing an oil change. And sometimes you get oil all over you. And she's like, this is an old shirt. And I'm like, yeah, babe, but it's motor oil you're wiping on me. I don't want that on me. I don't want it on my body, because it soaks right through your shirt. And, it's hard to get that soap all the way around the back. It's hard, move your hands like a good yogi. So we laughed. Of course, I forgave her, and, she forgave me for having an agenda about not getting a drop of oil on me. But again, if we come back to the teaching around being free, Janet brought it forward. All is God. All is God. And this is really the invitation. This is the experience of being open, is when we're open, we come to see that all is God. But so many of us, we will put something very small between us and God. Something very small. It'll just be one thought. One thought. And if you ever try to control a situation, and again, it's a funny example today, but I was trying to control the situation. I was trying to work in a way without getting a drip of oil on me. And of course, the other rule is we don't get a drip of oil on the driveway. Like, even though my driveway is just full of cracks and my sidewalk is mangled and disappearing, but I don't want to get a drop of oil on it. But when we make these rules, we project them onto reality, often we tend to close, we tend to grip. For some of us, it's rules about our children. Where I live in a hippie community, and I've always had very serious rules about my little girls and my little boy when they'd go to birthday parties. Is there food coloring in that cake? Do they use real sugar? It's like, is it vegan? Are they eating hot dogs? Like, what's going on over there? And so as a parent, sometimes we try to control, the diet of our children, what goes into the child's body. Some of us want all the vaccines. Others of us want none of the vaccines. And It's just the nature of the human mind to try to control. And as we control, we just notice the aperture of openness will get very, very limited, very, very tight. So I had a tight moment for half a second with my wife before I smiled and was like, yeah, it's just an old shirt. Like, I don't care about the old shirt. It was really, it was really, I had this thing. I was playing a game. I was trying to win the game of life, how to change the oil without getting a drip on you. But then, sometimes when we play these games, God comes along and says, hey, I'm in charge, not you. I'm in charge. I'm in charge. That's one of the things that God does. It's part of the intelligence of samsara. Me and my little girl, we went, again, we were uh, shopping for school supplies today. And, she's always talking to me about one of her friends got a new car and she's talking about, us getting a new car. And I'm like, I don't know if we got enough money for a new car right now, sweetheart. But, we can go take a look. We can go take a gander. And, I was just blown away how much cars cost now because it's just so crazy. But she wanted to look at a Toyota Sequoia. And I was like, okay, let's go drive around. Let's go take a peek at the shiny cars, the shiny cars. And so we were looking and, it's fun. It's fun just to look, from a place of openness, seeing all these brand new, beautiful cars in the lot. And we pulled up and we finally found a Sequoia, just one on the lot. And we got out and, I was looking at the paint and it was just glistening with light and just radiance and just feeling so open and wonderful. And then I looked at that price tag for 79K and I was like, oh boy, I didn't realize cars cost so much these days. Didn't realize. Like the last car I bought, cost 6,000 or 9,000 or something. I bought it from a buddy, an older Toyota. But anyways. So when we are being open, it's important to notice all the thoughts that come forward and attempt to limit your view, to limit your perspective. And that's what ego does. It tries to limit things down into the things I want and I desire. In this case, my little girl, because her friend got us a new Sequoia, she thought she should have a new Sequoia as well. Her daddy should. And so often we're open, and the openness is limited by desire or by fear. Or by fear. It's like, okay, are we going to be limited by desire or by fear? I think I spoke about this the other night. I can't remember, but we were outside and we got the some text, from uh, like a red alert system, and it said, "Aggressive bear is in your neighborhood." And we looked, and it was like, okay, the bear was one street away from where I live, so it was just like the next block over. And my daughter's running inside, and the wife's like, "Okay, let's all go inside," and I'm just outside, just watering all the plants and everything, taking care of the trees. And my wife yelled at me today. She's like, what do you think you're doing? You're not listening. You're out there and the bear is out there. And I'm like, I'm not worried about the bear. I'm not worried about the bear. I'm going to stay open. If I see the bear, oh, then I can make the choice to go inside. But I'm going to be open. Now, yesterday evening, we had 3 forest fires break out in Durango. And, it got smoky out. And I noticed there was just a little bit of fear arose, from my nervous system. And for me, it was fear about because I've had respiratory issues for the last 5 years from long COVID and everything. I was just like, it was more this fear of the past repeating itself. That I looked at the smoke and I turned on all the sprinklers in the yard. It's like let's get this place wet. Let's try to keep all the green stuff alive, keep it green. So if there's little cinders that kind of fall from the air, they won't light up our yard. And so I did a little bit more yard work, and then I went inside because I didn't want to breathe the smoke. And then I got up this morning, there was some more smoke, and then looks like maybe hopefully they got them put out. I didn't see any this afternoon, but who knows? Who knows? And so with openness can have an intelligence to it where it has choice in it. Whereas when we're in the ego, often we call this being unconscious. Unconscious. And when we're unconscious, we're moved by primal forces. Again, forces of desire. Like I'll have another piece of cake. Give me another scoop of that ice cream. And I bet you there's many people here who've started off with a scoop of ice cream, and then by the end of the evening, it might have been 3, 4, 5 scoops. I've never been able to pull that off. I can only eat just little bits of sweets anytime in my life. But anyways, sometimes we get carried away. Sometimes we get carried away with food. Now we can ask ourselves, like, was I awake there? Did I actually choose to have that fifth delicious scoop of ice cream? Or was it just numbing? Of course, many of us have done this with alcohol, where you go out and you say, I'm just going to have one drink. And then, 10 drinks later, you can barely walk home, and many of us, had that experience at least a couple times in college. In college. Me, I've been on the other end of it. I've always been so disciplined. It's been hard for me to get too lost in food or drink. But of course, there's been other things. Often my demon was getting lost trying to save somebody, trying to help out a friend too much, and then realizing, oh, they actually don't want help. They just want to complain a lot. They don't actually want help. They just want to complain. And we've all probably done that as well. We've all probably done that as well. Or we let the aperture of openness be moved by fear. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Blair writes, my mind is like this tweaking out, agitated beast. And then there's always music in the background. Yeah. It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing. Um, I love it. Blair's acknowledging she has an inner tweaker. David Morris writes, when I'm opening to experience, I'm curious in the exploration of what might happen. Yeah, and that's one of the things. If we want to stay open, we have to be curious about the openness. We have to be curious about the bigness of space. But too often we're tricked, by that agitated mind. We're tricked by the loud voice. Again, like when I was at Walmart today, just walking just peacefully into the store, I was tricked by this lunatic in front of me yelling and hollering, making this noise. And I was like, what's this guy doing? Who is this fella? What kind of nut is he? What kind of nut is this guy? And anyways, and so then you lose it for a moment. You lose the openness, and you might get lost in someone's coyote energy. But then, if you're curious, sometimes that coyote energy can wake you right up. And that's the beautiful thing about Tantra is we don't ask the world to be quiet, because that would be like the ultimate form of control. To say, I need you, the whole world, to be quiet because I'm trying to be open. Of course, openness must include sounds. It must include the nuts of the world. And some of you probably are missing out on the joke, but the nut who was making those strange noises and yelling at Walmart, well, that was this one right here. That was this one right here. But anyways, I was just having some fun with some friends. Okay, let's hear from about what Terry has to say. My mind compulsively observes and describes in spiritual terms what is being felt or observed as awareness and openness. And the response she gives is resistance, peace. My mind compulsively observes and describes in spiritual terms what is being felt or observed in awareness and openness. Yeah. Yeah. So oftentimes this is interesting because Terry's talking about the spiritual superego, because sometimes our spiritual self takes on a superego kind of role. And it's always, in a sense, like processing what we're feeling. And instead of doing that, I mean, that's good. That's healing for a period of time. But at some point, we have to step beyond the contents of the mind. If we want to know this bigger sense of self, we come into contact with a context of openness, the context of openness. And again, just to have some fun, like, whenever I'm in Walmart, often like I'm walking around in circles and getting some plastic things for this silly world we live in. And off somewhere in the distance, you know, you'll hear a baby cry. I'll just let out like this death scream. Ah! you know. And who knows what that baby's really saying? I got a wet diaper. I want something to eat, or I want that toy, whatever it is, whatever it is. And if you notice, like, I love being in a big store and hearing, someone let out a holler or something from really far away, because it gives you a sense of depth of the store, like how much space is in the store, how much room is there. Often when I'm traveling in the airport, there's a sense of being so open that everyone is walking through the field of this consciousness that I am, that life is, that all the airplanes are taking off and landing in this vast space of consciousness. But as humans, often we don't allow ourselves to go that big, to be that big. We make ourselves be these real small things. And when we're small, we're egocentric. We're only concerned about our thoughts. But when openness just continues to expand into infinity, there's a funny thing that happens. Our suffering very much diminishes because we're such a bigger space. Again, like if we go to like a baseball field, like a great stadium, and if we play the game with a baby again, where the baby is crying, like if one baby or 6 babies, maybe 10, let out a big scream, in a stadium, there's room, there's space for it to unravel, for it to release. There's space, there's room. We don't identify with it so much. But if that baby is ours and we have her on our hip and she screams right into our ear, oftentimes there's this identification and this sense of, no, stop, it's too loud. And I need to control this, or I need to make the baby stop. I need to do something. Whereas when we know ourselves as a big space, if you've ever hung out at a stadium, like after the show or after the game, you see the place is totally filthy. It gets like completely trashed, just garbage and stuff everywhere that has been left behind. And yet, because the stadium is so big, because it is so much space, because the stadium, is it the seats? Is it the field? The stadium is the whole area, the whole space. And it's not harmed, whether the Philharmonic Orchestra is playing or Metallica is playing. It's not harmed by the contents. I can remember there was this place that I used to skateboard at as a kid. It was kind of like an outdoor amphitheater. And we go there every night in the summer and just kind of skateboard, right outside of it. But we could see all the different shows. And some nights, again, was just like a sweet, violin playing or pianist. And then other nights was heavy metal. And then the next night it'd be country western. But for me, the space, it felt the same every night, despite, whatever music was playing, despite who was there. For me, I connected to it just as the realm of spaciousness, like a big open field. And the more we fall in love with this big open field that is our consciousness, the less the little things in life will disturb us, will bother us. And the more open and expanded we are, if there is tension in our body, well, that tension can unravel, it can release, it can empty out. And then the body can have the experience of being free. But if we're fully identified with the ego consciousness as this being that's separate and is fearful and wanting, well, like the Buddha taught, we can have a whole world of suffering. And so anyway, so that's what Anne writes, trying to steer the boat. Trying to steer the boat. Yeah, so many of us try to steer the boat of life and we fail. Catherine O'Neill writes, to me, it feels like no effing way. Oh, my Lord, this is intense. Dang, that's pretty beautiful. Holy wow. A lot of gratitude. Yeah. and so, and so Catherine's bringing up something interesting. So when we open up for the first time, like when we truly open, we open in a massive way, some of us, many of us, will begin to feel unhinged because there'll be a sense of the ego's losing control. Because as we truly open, the ego comes to recognize, oh, I'm not in control and I cannot control reality. But if we keep walking and opening and becoming curious, we might come to recognize that I am reality. There's another way of saying what Janet beautifully wrote is all is God. All is God. All is God. And if we want to be free, I assume we're here because we want to be free. I make this assumption every week, every time I teach, I make this assumption that we're here because we want to be free. If we want to be free, we have to acknowledge this, that all is God. All is God. God shows up as beautiful ponderosa pines. And sometimes God shows up as beautiful ponderosa pines on fire. On fire. And that's what's happening where I live. Is just I have all these beautiful ponderosa pines and these aspen trees. And some of them in the summertime they catch on fire. And that's God too. But the mind wants to come in and say, that's global warming, that's humans, we're bad, we're wrong. We all need to drive electric cars. Oh, wait, no, we can't drive electric cars because Elon Musk has electric cars and we have to be against him. And, the mind goes crazy, crazy with ideas, crazy with beliefs. I was listening to Bill Gates talk the other day, and they're talking about, how to solve the climate change crisis. And, he's the biggest owner of farmland here in the US. And um, someone was saying like, "Hey, you got to plant trees on all that farmland," and he just like laughed in their face. He's like, "No, planting trees is not the answer. We're gonna fill the sky with some kind of particulates to block out the rays of the sun." I'm like, "Wow, this is insane, man. This is an insane man against planting trees." But anyways, anyways, this too is a manifestation of God in the form of a computer uh, salesman is what I'll call him, a computer salesman. And sometimes when we're a computer salesman, when we're a computer guy, we disconnect fully from our heart. We disconnect fully from our heart and we live in the arrogance of the mind. And we've all done this on the path. There's always been moments when we don't live from the openness of our heart, because when we're truly open in the heart, it requires that we feel everything. And for the ego, feeling is not preferable. Thinking is preferable. Strategizing, attempting to control and manipulate reality is preferable to feeling. According to the ego, feelings can be way too much, and it can feel like no effing way. It's like Catherine writes, no effing way. But if we're curious, David Morris is writing this about just seeing what comes. What exactly is this openness? What might come if we let go of our agenda? If we let go of our agenda, what might come? If we hold on to our agenda, like if I'm yelling at my wife, "You put oil on my shirt and it's soaking through and getting on my skin, and that's not fair." And if I screaming at her and I make her wrong, well, I'm probably not going to have a nice dinner. I'm probably going to have to eat by myself. I'm probably going to, be sleeping on the couch or whatever it is. But if I let go of my agenda, to have a dropless oil change, squeaky clean oil change, well then, I could smile and be in love and be in love. But in order to be in love, we have to be willing to feel and experience everything without shutting the heart. And so if we want to know what it means to be awake, what it means to be enlightened, let's start with that. Let's start with that this week. Can I feel and experience everything without shutting the heart? Now, many of us will fail at this practice. And if and when we do fail, let us simply begin again. That's the beautiful thing about openness, is we can always just keep opening. Even if our heart shuts down, if we're in pain, we can say, "Okay, I'm willing to sit with this pain. I'm willing to open to it. I'm willing to grieve it." And as we grieve it, it releases. And then we're left with being open to being open. Now, the last thing I will say, Anne's asking us all to watch the dimming about geoengineering on YouTube. Too scary. Yeah, I always thought that geoengineering was fake. I thought it was just like a conspiracy theory, but in 2025, we're finding out that all the conspiracy theories are true, even those big columns under the pyramids. But anyways, all the pyramids were made by aliens. And aliens are just us in the future after we've morphed with AI and discovered time travel. what I'm just having a little fun with y'all. But no, seriously. But really, let's watch it. The dimming about geoengineering, and they do it. They do it. They spray stuff. I mean, how they do? They've been doing it in Colorado for years, trying to make it snow. They try to make it snow over our ski resorts on certain months of the year, the ski season months. So yeah, yeah. Okay, Gianni writes a part that says I'm not good enough or I'm wrong. Yeah, yeah. And so Gianni, let's do this. So when we're walking around and we're being open. Let's all just play it now. We close our eyes and we're opening to being open. And if we notice a little something that says, I'm wrong, maybe it says, I don't like this. I'm going to invite us to be open to this, to feel into the energy of being wrong. If we could first ask, like, is it true that I'm wrong? Like, Gianni, is it true that you're wrong? Of course not. Of course you're not wrong. But if we continue to stay open and we look and just investigate, we might find that this thing that thinks it's wrong is trying to give us a message. And that message might simply be that there's a part of us that's hurting. And of course, if there's any part of us that's hurting, let's meet it with love. Let's meet it with love. Let's meet it with kindness. Let's meet it with openness. Let's breathe into it until it feels right, till it feels okay, till it feels heard and nurtured and supported. And so that's the healing practice. And if we do these healing practices, it will support us in continuing to be open. Okay, let's hear from Blair. Hi, Blair.
Hello.
Oh, good to see you.
Good to see you. So sometimes like I'll be opening and everything's good. And then I start to feel agitated, like extremely agitated, and I'll start like moving in these weird ways. And then like this this like animalistic energy starts like rising up and I'll feel it like going up my lower back.
Yeah.
And it's really painful. Like it feels like, well, this sounds unhinged, but it like wants violence and like just to like go berserk and like start screaming. And
Have you ever let it go berserk and start screaming?
yes, it,
Okay. How'd it feel?
well, it felt like partially exhilarating. Like I literally felt like a wild animal in that
Mhm.
moment, but also it's scary because it's like, well, first of all, it's really a lot of energy, and it's like there's no ground. It's like I don't know anything. I'm not in control. Like you were saying something about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna invite you just to play with it, to play with it. So like in Zen, there's this old teaching that if you have a caged up angry bull, give it a big open field. Like just let it out, let it go run. And literally just like 2 blocks from my house is the rodeo, the Durango Pro Rodeo. And so we ride our bikes, it's just like ride on the river trails, the fairgrounds. And but sometimes like the other day we went and we just checked out those bulls and they don't like being pent up, and so when they open that gate, the bull will kind of buck and snort and huff and kick the dirt and be really violent. But if you give them like 20 minutes, a lot of times if you give them about 6 minutes, 3 minutes, they calm down real quick. And then they just walk around just with this big sense of, I'm the boss. I'm El Jefe. I'm El Jefe here in the field. In the field. And Blair, I want you to give yourself the same permission. The same permission. And I had this very just bizarre moment, once upon a time. It's a silly story, but I was at my old house, I had an outdoor sauna. And then I was like, I'd like to have a cold plunge. And the best thing I had was a garbage can that the snow fell off the roof and just like made this ice. And it was just like, okay, and it was frozen ice. It's like, can't get in that. But when spring came, that ice began to melt. And I looked in the water and I saw these little creatures. They were like little amoebas. I don't know how many cells they had, but it was just like these little creatures. And it was just obvious that they had just hatched. And while they were hatching, like they were just like kind of like flinging themselves around. And they look like if you ever saw like tadpoles, like on the first moment they hatch, they're just doing this thing that's, where their spine is just like rolling and it just can't stop moving. And it's just like wiggling uncontrollably. And for many of us as Kundalini awakens, like we're going to do, we're going to do some kind of Kundalini dance. It might look like the Axl Rose Welcome to the Jungle dance. You might be too young for that one, but anyways, where the spine just starts, dancing like a snake. Sometimes it goes into cat and cow. Sometimes it's just like full on, just like wild, frantically shaking. And we need to allow this until it's runs itself out. Until it runs itself out. And, I know you live with friends and there's a baby in the house and this, that, but, you also live in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so you can go for a ride in the car and just get out and lay in the grass somewhere in the trees or jump in the creek or the river or whatever and let your body be as wild as it wants to be. And you'll find that after all this rage or this intensity and this fire burns out, you'll be left just with this feeling of bigness, of radiance. And it'll actually be really calm. And in a funny way, you will feel the most empowered you've ever felt in your life. And yet at the same time, there'll be a quality to it that will feel thrilling and out of control. But if you trust yourself, and by trusting yourself, you trust yourself just to say, like, it's okay for me to be huge and open and out of control. Like I'm out of control all the time. But if you follow me around, it's a pretty boring life. Like not much is going on here. I mean, occasionally, I'm doing some exciting stuff, some mountain biking or rock climbing or jujitsu, whatever. But most of the time, it's just this huge energy walking around. And I mean, for me, it's summertime. So I'm walking around with a garden hose, just like watering plants, and just doesn't seem like there's anything there. If you step into my body, there's this huge presence. And that's just one with all the life. And that's what Kundalini Shakti is this recognition that I am manifest reality. Shiva consciousness is I am unmanifest reality. With Kundalini Shakti, it's I am the manifest. That the manifest is all made of light. That all of this even the material, is God. Is God. And that's a big deal to realize this. And so as you feel this energy coming up your spine, like, because our spines are full of unconscious material, that's not just Blair, that's everyone, because we have our 7 chakra centers and the 7 different ways that we repress the divine truth, and we live in egoic identity. The Shakti is going to put pressure on anything we're thinking or believing that's not true. And so that's where that resistance is going to be. But if you give yourself permission to be big, what you'll find is you'll burn through that stuff very quickly. And you realize, oh, that was just like some limitation that my mother gave me, or my father gave me, or someone gave me. That's not me. And so as the light runs into limitation, you're going to feel pressure, you're going to feel blockages. But again, I want you just to go with it. And, sometimes like within that, like as that light comes online, the ego will have a sense of angst, like, this is too much, I can't handle this, or I want to kill, sometimes I want to destroy, and again, like when I was a kid, I grew up listening to a lot of punk rock, and just those guys just screaming in that microphone. And what I loved about punk rock is like the lyrics were always pretty stupid, it was like middle school boy stuff. But what I loved about it was an open throat chakra, and it was a full expression of intensity. And they weren't holding anything back. And that's what I liked about it, is just feeling that full expression of intensity. And for most of us, that's going to be liberating on the path, time to time, when it's like we have way too much pressure, too much resistance in us, and we need to just kind of scream it out. We need to unload, we need to vomit a little bit. I don't mean that literally, but just, experientially, we need to empty that out and let yourself be big. But, like, I can remember just like driving around, like looking at my hands and just thinking, I could just kill anything right now, But also, because I have a heart, I'm probably not going to be killing anything anytime soon. It's like, probably not going to be killing anything anytime soon. Like if we're driving a car, we're killing lots of bugs, but like, I'm not going to be killing anything anytime soon. And like sometimes if you can trust yourself in a sweet way, in a serene way, then the agitation will actually burn off real quick, and you just feel power. You just feel bigness. And, I want you to get really comfortable with being really big, taking up lots of space. And most spiritual people are so comfortable with peace, they're comfortable with emptiness. Not many spiritual people are comfortable with being full. And I'll just say this, if you want to be a successful, integrated spiritual being here on planet Earth, you have to get comfortable being full. Being full. And after all, it's just full of light, full of radiance, full of immensity. But it will frighten our ego as we step into this hugeness. It'll overwhelm the ego. The ego will resist it. But the more we just talk to our ego, letting know, like, hey, this is safe. I promise you, I will not go crazy. So see, like you talk to the human part of you, like, I promise you, I will not go crazy. But there's definitely going to be some shaking, some trembling. There might be some raw vocal cords, there might be some tears, and I can remember I've had days where it's like I had so many tears that my face was just like full of salt, and mucus and just like, and a raspy throat and just like, and sweat through, all my clothes because it's just like so much releasing and shaking and trembling. But to me, like, I just rolled with it. I was like, this is good. It feels good. Like, don't you feel lighter after you? Yeah.
It just like moves some energy. Less.
Yeah. And with Kundalini, it's like, I want to move all the energy right now. And that's how Kundalini is. It's like, I don't want to wait till tomorrow. The ego is always like, no, let's do it tomorrow. Let's do it when we're perfect. Let's do it when we got everything sorted out. Let's do it when we got, 10,000 in the bank or 100,000 in the bank, whatever the number is. Let's do it later. But Kundalini is like, now's the time. Now's the time. Oh, it's the middle of the night. You're trying to sleep. You're finally relaxed. Now's the time. And I want to be big and I want to move and I want to shake. I want to empty all this out. And, for most of us, the ego is like, no, this isn't convenient. But again, it's like, if we want to be free, we don't care about what's convenient. We care about what the truth is. And the truth about Blair is a huge soul, a radiant being of light. And now's the time to honor that. Now's the time to honor that. And if we have to do the Osho dance, to get to that bigness, like, let's do the Osho dance. Like, let's do it. Let's do it. If people don't know about it, it's called the dynamic meditation. And it's just like this wild, crazy, hippie yogi dance. But it's like, we just need to let it all unravel and empty out. Let's get all the limitation out of the way and allow you to be you. And once you realize yourself as the hugeness of what you are, then you can ask yourself, like, do I need to be afraid of this? Do I need to shut this down? Am I actually unhinged? Like, the big thing you'll notice is you won't be taking shit from people, but you also won't care either. So it's like you won't put up with, crap from others, but you also won't care, whatever they say. And so there's freedom in it, there's space in it. Whereas sometimes our ego thinks if I become that big, I will be a narcissist. I'll be somebody bad. I'll be, the Democrats' person they hate the most. I'll be Donald Trump. Donald Trump. And I can't be that. It's like, no, you're going to be a big, bright light. A big, bright light. That's what you're going to be. And it's going to be absolutely good. And the brilliance of this light will burn up anything that is limited or less than or confused. And even if there's angst and rage along the way, that rage will burn itself out through opening to this hugeness. And I invite you to trust in that. A lot of people, when they look at this thing, like what the great Krishnamurti says, like, if you knew what this was, you wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot stick, 10-foot pole, I think is what he said. And for me, when I saw it, at first I was really afraid, but then I was like, okay, let's check this thing out. Let's check this thing out. Let's give it a test drive. Let's see what kind of motor it has in it. And it's got the motor of life. And it feels big and it feels thrilling. It feels ridiculously good. Whereas the ego, when it first looks at this thing, is like, oh, if I open to this, I'm going to destroy everything. And I'll say this, in a sense, there is a truth to that in a non-dual sense, like on an absolute level, you come to realize that you are the creator and the destroyer and the sustainer and everything in between. And everything in between. And so this thing burns up all the pairs of opposites once we step into it. And we have to allow ourselves to be everything, all that is. And it's a big realization. It's not just some little thing. And so you let it flow, you trust in it. And, in a funny way, if you've ever seen this will sound really crazy, but I'm just gonna say it. You've ever seen, like, I don't really watch superhero movies, but when there's like that arch villain and they have that like maniacal laughter, and they're like, ha 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 ha, I'm going to destroy the world unless the world gives me, like what Dr. Evil said, $1 million, is what he wanted. And I'm sorry. But it can be okay just to allow yourself to have a little bit of that maniacal laughter and just to kind of get off on the power and just to enjoy it, to open to it. It's a lot better than being afraid of it and trying to be like a spiritual goody two shoes. Like, it's okay to be like, ha 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 ha. I am Kali the destroyer. Let yourself be Kali. Let yourself play with it. Let yourself be the fullness of Shakti. And I want you to really look, like, do you end up being Dr. Evil, or do you end up being this big bright light here on planet Earth? My bet is you'll be a big bright light. You won't be Dr. Evil. But sometimes, like when the ego's really afraid of it, that there's like a sick part of the ego that's a little bit twisted that can actually get excited about this. And that can be a little tantric doorway of just like opening that doorway and being like, okay, I'm just going to let myself be big. I've been so damn small my whole life. I've been limited. I've been this little spiritual person, always trying to find the rules. Like, what if I'm just the destroyer? In yoga, they try to have us do this thing, lion's breath. It's like, do it, be wild, play with it. And that's like the big thing that Osho came and taught so many people, is just to allow themselves to be this big, wild radiance, even if you do cause a little trouble. Even if you do cause a little trouble, and we all will. But when you're the bigness, you come to realize, I'm a soul, you're a soul, we're all souls. It's all okay. It's all God. And I forgive you, and you forgive me, and I forgive myself, and I forgive us all. And it's all forgiven because we're all human, and it's all okay. It's all okay. So anyways, I'm going to cheer you on, Blair. Keep opening. Keep opening. Use that doorway of rage just to keep opening. Okay. Okay. All right. I think that's probably it. Let's see. Let me just see one thing that Lauren wrote here. My mind is always trying to conserve energy, increase efficiency, and focus on survival. It has anxiety about starting work again because I've been overworked for so long that it feels like it's jumping back into the frying pan. The energy is like a squirrel constantly gathering and burying nuts. Yeah, yeah. And we all have that. We all have that as a survival mind. And again, like, we're just going to let it flow. We're going to keep opening. We're going to trust. We're going to let it all move. And Lauren, get some rest. Like, sometimes we just need to listen to the body and give it rest. And if we give it rest, the anxiety disappears. And we're like, oh yeah, I'm home. I'm home, resting in my being, resting in my nature. I'm home. So Lauren, my prescription to you is let yourself come home. Let yourself fully arrive here in Durango. Give yourself some time and space. Don't think about work just yet, but just let yourself fully land here. Okay. Okay. So much love to all of you. So much respect. See you all next week. Okay. Much love. Bye for now.